Hello everyone, it's Owen here at Campkins in my little cubby hole, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Tim Hill. Hello Tim.
Hi, how you doing? Nice to meet you all.
Tim is, we'll find out very soon, is done very well with his photography over the years, but he had the joy of working for Campkins late 90s, early noughties. So I'm going to start there, Tim. When we first met, do you have any special memories of working at Campkins?
Yeah, absolutely. I had enrolled in Long Road College in Cambridge in photography, and I didn't really know what it was about, but I was looking for a job, and at 16 I walked in off the street and asked your father for a job over in Rose Crescent, and very luckily he gave it to me. I think because I was very cheap, and yeah, so I worked at Campkins from 16 on and off throughout all of my photography education, actually. So whenever I had holidays from A-levels, universities, whatever, I was able to come back to the shop and add more knowledge into my technical skill more than anything, which was great.
It was a pleasure working for you, and in a way, when I sort of took over in King's Parade, you were one of the first people to work under my wing, in a way.
I have many, many fond memories of that shop. Absolutely. I love to visit whenever I'm back in Cambridge, because it was such a formative period of my life working in the shop. I think I learned a lot and took a lot away from the experience. I think even salesmanship as well. It definitely helped me to sell myself and my photography product when I started to make it, because taught me to explain what was good about what I was doing, but also taught me how to shut up when I'd already sold myself and not keep talking and unsell myself.
Very important life.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite stories I remember about Tim and his cameras that he had at the time here was you loved a little Ricoh GR camera.
Yes.
And you had a couple of those, didn't you, Tim?
I think I probably had about 4 altogether. They were very nice cameras that didn't last very long, especially in my hands.
I'm not sure you can blame Ricoh for that, though.
No, I can't blame Ricoh for that. I can blame alcohol for that, and the fact that I really love to have the camera on me the whole time. So things like Glastonbury Festival destroyed a few cameras and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I remember once you sending 2 of these cameras off to the repairers and begging them to send 1 working camera back.
Yeah, which they did, but then strangely the one that they said they repaired died a week later, and the one that they'd taken all the gears out of came back to life and started working for another 1.5 years. So I don't know what they were doing, but
call that a Campkins miracle.
Yes, exactly. Happens a lot.
Yeah. And by the way, we do actually get quite a few cameras up and running by somehow just entering the shop. So do come and see us when you can. But yeah, so now obviously that's, we obviously have a history together. But I'm delighted by what's happened to you since leaving Campkins. So maybe you'd just like to give us a brief. I think my last shift in Campkins was after my final year of university. So I'd done photography at uni, and although I knew I loved photography, I didn't particularly know what it was going to be to become a photographer. And although being around cameras all the time at Campkins was very rewarding, I knew that I wanted to stop selling people the equipment I wanted to use and go off and start using it. So after a couple of years, I think it was in the Cambridge area, I think I did a few snowboard seasons, but I went to London with no real idea what I was going to do. I think it was about 2007, and I begged my way basically into working in photography studios. And I did, very similar to the way I started at Campkins, I basically did T-boy stuff for as long as it took to start learning about lights, equipment, that kind of stuff, what it meant to do much bigger setups than I'd ever been used to, even at university. And I think I did a 9-month shift in a studio, left a studio, met some photographers, started being assistant. So again, you start carrying bags and making tea, which all the skills were from Campkins. So thanks for that. I thought we did coffees at Campkins.
Yeah, well, coffees and tea. You need all the skills.
So yeah, I did that, and then I did 5 years of assisting. So I got much better. Learned a lot of technical information. Sorry, my son's just out of camera. And I then started. I had a housemate who was assisting with me, and we started shooting. So at first, I started off shooting a lot of the stuff that I'd sort of learnt about during my education in Campkins years of events, architecture, that kind of thing. The stuff that you can do in a more normal jobbing photography world. But then after a while, I started shooting fashion, especially for London College of Fashion. And myself and my now shooting partner, James, started shooting this London College of Fashion stuff at the same time. People started to like the two different styles combined, and we started doing editorial, which is magazine work, and shared the cost of starting up, because the photography industry is born sort of out of an aristocratic world where people are fortunate enough to be able to do it. So there's still a bit of cost associated with starting up. So you pay for your own shoots, that kind of thing. You don't get paid very much for magazine work. So sharing the cost with someone else is always very good. And also your creative doubts and ideas, that's very nice to have a sounding board. So we started off as a duo at the very end of our assisting career. Then we got more popular. People liked what we did. We got signed by a small agency, worked there as our commercial career started to take off, and jumped forward a few years, or I think it was probably near on 20 years since I last did a shift in Campkins, and we're at a good agency, seem to be doing very well, have some nice clients, and doing fashion photography and video. So a photographer and director.
Now, you're quite unique in the way you do photography as well, in a way. And I'm actually going to bring you back to the last camera you bought from my father.
Yep.
I think you might have hiding on your tabletop there.
It's here.
And that is
Leica M6.
Yep.
Although I've replaced the lens since, but it's a Summicron 50mm f2. From Europe. But yeah, this is probably my most prized possession in terms of cameras.
Very good nick.
Well, anyway, it looks in very good nick because the case is not in very good nick. But luckily, I keep it on it all the time, so it saves it. It's probably my most cherished camera possession. But I do use it occasionally for my fashion work. But it's actually the first camera I pick up when I don't have a client and I don't have someone telling me what to photograph. So if I'm traveling wherever in the world I want to travel, then that's the camera I have at my hip most of the time. And
that sounds like it's your family camera then as well.
Yeah, basically, it's a wonderful camera that produces the most amazing images if you get everything right at the right time. Because I don't know whether your clients have used Leicas, but they are a particular camera that rewards you for doing it right, but you have to really try to get it right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish I could have more of them on our shop shelves, to be honest. My dad did very well that day when he found you that one, I think. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Well done.
I do use a similar camera for the fashion work, but one of the reasons why it's not so great for fashion is because it's a rangefinder.
Yeah.
So with fashion, obviously, you're either trying to capture a moving object or you are framing very particularly. So the rangefinder means that only in the center of the frame can you get your focus. Whereas I tend to use a Nikon F3T
right
when I'm doing the same sort of thing, because it's an SLR, which means I can focus off center,
yeah.
which is quicker when your subject is doing something, which is the way we would normally shoot in a more documentary style.
Yeah. And this is leading me on, because nearly all your work is done film-based, isn't it?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to start at Campkins and at university when film was still being taught, and go through the process of film taking a back seat to digital within the market and creatively throughout my time at Campkins and university. And then the thing that's happened is I'm one of a similar age. So I've just turned 40, and there's a lot of us who are now at, let's say, the top echelon of certainly the UK fashion industry, who grew up in that same sort of educational transition. And I think what we did is we learnt all about our heroes who were film photographers. We got taught this film and then a bit of digital. And when we got into the big end of things, we had these dreams of the way we thought it would happen. So what we've all done basically is deliberately just gone back in time and said, no, we're going to shoot this on film. We want that magic that we grew up with and certainly grew up within the industry. And so there's a lot of us shooting film at the top end. You can find medium format film easier in London than you can find 35mm now.
Wow. Even Portra 400?
Or even Portra 400. I'll grab a box of it.
Yeah,
it's just behind me.
Don't worry, I have found some, but it's not easy at the moment. So I think the next thing to do is show the beast that's your main work camera. Yeah.
Okay. This is I can't really see it, can you? This is the Pentax 6.7 Mark 1. And this is probably our go-to camera. Again, it's an SLR, so although it's a very heavy beast of a camera, it's extremely intuitive when it comes to focusing on stuff. One of the things we like to do in our work is create sort of contrived situations, but then we make sure that situation is able to be photographed in a documentary style on the day. So we put a lot of work into the concept and everything that's going to happen. But this camera allows us to go back to that sort of documentary style of shooting, seeing what is happening there, being able to quickly focus even though it's manual. Your viewpoint on this is a standard eye level finder. So everything's there. I mean, this handle's here because it's so heavy to carry that when you stop shooting, you hold this rather than it during shooting. But it's a beautiful camera. I never got to use this during uni or anything like that. It's only in the professional sphere that I found out about this camera. But I don't think I could go back now. It's a real pleasure to use. Although this is a Mark 1 because the Mark 2s have a lot of faults. So there's a reason why we keep getting Mark 1s.
And for fashion photography, would you be using a 85mm?
It depends. 85mm, yes, but to be honest, because as I explained, I've been through a lot of photography education and known a lot of different cameras over the years. A lot of my heroes were documentary photographers and portrait photographers. So a lot of them are using 50mm and stuff like that. They're people like Cartier-Bresson shooting with the M3, 50mm, very small setup. So in the same way, I tend to actually stray to the 105 or the 90 on the Pentax, which is the equivalent of a 40 or a 50mm. I think it just suits my eye. But saying that, we also have a macro 135, 200mm, which we use when the background needs to be disappeared because it's complicated or ugly. I've even accidentally got a 300mm that came with a body I bought the other day, which I haven't even managed to get on because it's about this long and I don't know what to use it for yet. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll find the one occasion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've mentioned your fashion photography. I believe you've had the magazine front cover of quite a few famous.
Yeah, we've done quite well. Ones more recent and ones you might have heard of are Vogue Ukraine and Vogue Netherlands. We just had those two covers within the last month or two. They were nice. Vogue Ukraine was shot around the Chiltern Hills, so not so far from where you are, with a model, Edie Campbell. Really nice shoot. Quite nice to do stuff in Britain, although obviously at the moment most things are happening in Britain. It's quite hard to leave the country professionally. Although the Vogue Netherlands cover, we got very nicely to shoot in the south of France, near Nice. So that was a really, really nice one to do, mainly because we got to go on a plane. But yeah, great model, great magazine, and a real pleasure to do that one. We've had other covers of other magazines, but the fashion industry, I think, has a lot of publication titles that are great in the fashion industry for fashion people to see, but I'm not sure if everybody would know the titles of those magazines.
And again, that sounds like photography is taking you around the world.
Yeah, photography and assisting beforehand. Assisting, I was very lucky. I got to go to a lot of places as the helper, which is potentially a less stressful way to go and see different countries of the world. But yeah, as a photographer, I've been sent some nice places. One of the magazines that we did shoot the cover for was Holiday. We got the cover for that twice, which is a Parisian fashion magazine, and that was the first one was Jerusalem, and the second one was Bhutan. So we got to go to Bhutan in the Himalayas for it's not so much a job, because with the magazine stuff, you get a budget, but you don't tend to get paid because of the idea that the promotion comes from the magazine, and then you'll pick up a client afterwards, either loosely associated with the magazine or elsewhere. I was very fortunate to get to go to Spain 3 weeks ago to shoot Louis Vuitton campaign, which was lovely, on an old Roman ruins, like an old temple in the south of France, in the south of Spain. So
fantastic. Yeah. Lucky chap.
Yeah. I know.
You're doing some local work too as well.
Yeah. We just shot something again in the Chilterns, because James, my shooting partner, he happens to live near there, so we know the area very well. We just shot something there in the Chilterns as well. So we do local stuff. But for us, our style is quite British, and it's always translated quite well to Europe and America and other international places. So we actually work more abroad than we do in the UK. I think because potentially our style is seen as something more exotic from outside, if you know what I mean. Less familiar, I guess.
Yeah. So we can obviously, everyone can tell that your real love of photography is taking on film, but some shoots you must need to use digital, and I know you're doing a bit more video work as well these days.
Yeah, so video wise, we have a Sony A7. Is it A7S2? You'll probably be able to tell me more.
Yeah, that's the Sony full frame camera, which is designed more for video.
Yeah, so we use that when we are being the DOP ourselves. So when we're shooting ourselves, we would have that small setup, shoulder mount, gimbal, that kind of thing. We did a video for the Louis Vuitton thing I just talked about, and I couldn't even tell you what camera that was. We had a DOP who came along, and there were rails, and it was massive, and it was on his shoulder. So that was some kind of broadcast quality digital thing. But I don't even think it was, a Black Magic or a Red. I think it was something more. We collaborate a lot. So even when you direct something, sometimes you don't know what the technical side of it is, because someone's doing that for you, which is a very fortunate position. Photography wise, digital. So if we were shooting something more medium format, we would probably push for using our own Hasselblad 503, because they have the detachable film backs, and because they have that, lots of people have made digital backs for them. Yeah. Phase One being one company. So we'd probably use something like, I think it's a Phase One IQ 80 or whatever the model equivalent is. That the technology moves so fast, I can't remember the numbers. And that just means that we slow down that digital process. We're using manual focus. We're in familiar territory for us, because one of the reasons why I particularly like film is because it concentrates my mind, I think, not having that infinite amount of frames. So something like the Hasselblad that sort of puts you in a little bit of beneficial quicksand to slow down is a good thing for us. So yeah, we'd use that.
So even though you're shooting digital, you're still trying to get that shot right the first time.
Exactly, yeah, and you're still slowing down. The other thing is that you work with a large team, and often people. I mean, this doesn't happen too much with our present teams. I don't think it happens at all. But people use digital as an excuse not to concentrate on what's happening first time. Lots of people will wait for a shot to come up on a monitor to say, oh, I've got to fix that, I've got to do this. And that personally, I think is that's not the job we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be on the whole time. And that's also another thing I like about film, because everybody really watches because they're worried they're not going to be able to see it, which is good for us.
We have used completely digital setups. I was shooting the other day with, I think the code is right, the G100X or F. It's a Fuji camera. It's a large SLR
medium format
type body, and the idea is we were trying to recreate the Pentax 6.7 type feel, the more SLR feel of what we were doing on a sensor that was big enough for us to use for any purpose. Because obviously there are more SLR type digitals, such as the Canon range, but when you don't particularly know whether your picture is going on a website or a billboard, you need that extra sensor size just to make sure that you get it. And stuff like the Hasselblad own brand medium format systems, the H systems, they're not very intuitive when it comes to that SLR feel. They tend to search for focus. They, you know, even the body is this sort of shape. Whereas if you want this sort of ease of use, then I think it's a GX100. You might have to check that. But yeah, that was more intuitive certainly for me to use. You could sort of run around with it a bit more.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And are you aware that there is a big resurgence in film photography?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's a little bit of a resurgence because photography in itself it's less necessary. One of the reasons why we're doing video, I have trained in video in my ascension in the industry, if you know what I mean. I didn't do video at university, but because of digital technologies, there's not a lot of reason why things have to stay still. So we often get asked now to do video versions of what we're doing. But because of the still image, I think, being a bit less needed and a bit more prized, the industry, certainly the magazine industry at the top end, have moved towards this more bespoke, artistic type end product. So a bigger magazine, hardback, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think the film lends itself to that type of end product. It's all as wonderful as it can get. So yeah, there's a lot of us who want to shoot on film. I hand print again now, which is something I had stopped doing for about 10, 15 years.
So bathroom turned into the darkroom.
Well, I'm fortunate that I live in London, and in London there are still probably 5 or 6 labs I could think of that are doing hand printing and you know, regular film development where we can request certain techniques on the film and stuff like that. So yeah, I can name drop them if you want, but
I'm sure they can be found.
Yes, they can be found. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of romantics at the top of the industry at the moment, and we'd like to, you know, use that film technique that we were taught very early on at university and stuff, and it certainly takes me back to a place where that's what photography meant to me. You know, it was taking a picture in the hope that you thought you got something, yeah, waiting for it to be developed, getting that buzz where it's perfectly right, then taking it to a darkroom, getting the most out of what you can do with everything that you can do in a darkroom. We do then tend to digitally scan them, and then it will go through the normal retouch process, and we'll still have to color balance it because the magazines tend to still be digitally printed. So there is still a digital end product. I still use an Epson, I can't remember what it is, 750, something like that, to scan a lot of negs. Yeah. Because a lot of the time you don't have any choice but to then translate them digitally so that everybody else can look at them, because it's nice to be a purist, but what's the point if no one can look at them?
No, true. Yeah. You must still have binders of negatives then somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Boxes and boxes and boxes, and still binders and negatives from the time I was at Campkins as well, which I can't even look at because it would take me so long to go through them. It's nice that, you know, negatives are a wonderful thing. They don't break like hard drives. So at some point there are times when I have lost images and gone back to the negative and been like, oh, thank God, and rescanned them and got them back into a digital form. Sorry, right. Just noises.
That's fine. Is that little baby?
No, it's a boiling kettle or something, but yeah.
Well, There we go. There's baby and mum.
Yeah,
Very happy.
lovely.
So if obviously, well, this is a message to everyone, but we obviously have good connections with Long Road Photography Department, Anglia Ruskin there as well. So if for anyone starting out in photography in tomorrow, let's say, if they wanted to start, have you got any last tips that you might give them? Any words of advice?
It depends. I benefited greatly from going to university and doing photography. The theory that I got taught and the photographers I got pointed at, hey, this is a good photographer, that's a good photographer, looking at them, it definitely benefited me greatly. But there is actually a counter argument to starting at the bottom, going in earlier to something like a photography studio where you are going to be doing menial work, working your way up the ladder. I didn't actually start that process till I think I was about 20, maybe even 27. And that means that I'm older than a lot of my contemporaries. But saying that, university opened my eyes to what I wanted to learn, and potentially is much more influential on my style now. And I don't know whether I would have that same style if I went to university. So if you feel like it, I think university is a great place to learn to do photography. I would say open your eyes to video, because the reality of it is, if you want to be a commercial photographer now, then you probably have to be a commercial director as well. So maybe a course that has some element of that might be a help as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess I would have to say in my life, university was very good for me and my photography. But at the same time, I know a lot of people who either did something completely different at university, such as my shooting partner who did philosophy. And I also know people who never went to university, and they sort of filled in the gaps in their photography education while they were learning the technical pursuit, because I definitely didn't get the technical side from university. I mean, honestly, I learned a lot of my technical side from Campkins, while from the people who I was working with, such as yourself, who would tell me stuff, and I would soak it in like a sponge, and then that would be related to what I was being taught at university. But after I left university, I started my technical journey, and most of it I've learned on the job, because you're using equipment that universities can't afford, and you're having to not make mistakes. You know, there's the real world consequences of what you do right or do wrong, and that's always been a great motivator for me. You know?
Unfortunately, we're running out of time there. I could carry on talking to you for it, but it's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you physically sometime soon.
Absolutely. We'll go around the corner for a pint. Be nice.
Yeah, and I hope the guys out there have enjoyed listening to us today.
Okay. Goodbye.
We'll catch up soon, Tim. Thanks a lot. Keeping well out there. Bye now.